Hello, and welcome to another interview in my series where I'm speaking to one of our many global UX research practitioners from around the world. My name's Paul Blunden, and I'm founder of UX24, and we help global brands be more customer-centric to deliver better products and services. So let's find out who we're going to speak to today. So hello, and thank you for giving your time up to speak with me today. Can I start by asking you to introduce yourself? What's your name and whereabouts are you located?
Sure. Hi, I'm Brian Loeb, and I work out of Spain, Madrid.
Well, I can tell by your accent that you're not native. How long have you been in Spain, Brian?
I've lived here since, about 22 years on this spell, though I did have a stint in London for about a year, back in 2013. But and then back in the 90s, I also lived in Spain for 3 years. So, but I'm originally from California in the USA.
Lovely. And I presume after living in Spain so long, you're fluent Spanish now?
Yes, I keep my accent. It's kind of one of my trademarks. But the Spanish is fluent with a nice American accent, kind of, as I speak Spanish.
Well, so many of our researchers are multilingual. Do you run research in English and Spanish?
Yeah, that I do. It's probably about 50-50 now, especially since COVID, with a lot of the remote methodologies. I get a lot more UK and US work, but up until before like 2018, it was almost 100% in Spanish.
Wow. And do you speak any other languages?
No.
Right. Okay. Two's plenty.
Tiny bit, just a little bit of a really bad Catalan, because I also lived in Barcelona for 9 years.
Oh, right. Lovely. Nice to get around Spain a bit. And how did you get into research?
Well, I always enjoyed research, even back when I was doing degrees. I did a degree in Latin American and Iberian studies, and a lot of those were kind of research projects. I'm actually going out. We'd go to libraries back in those days, and we do. We get together secondary information sources, and then we go out and we'd interview people in the industry and experts. So I really like that. And then that continued when I did an MBA. And similarly, I was attracted to research, and I did an internship for a investment banking firm doing research into equity research, which is basically just companies that are trading in on the stock market. And so and it involved a lot of research into markets, but then also interviewing executives and experts, and then when the .com boom in San Francisco exploded, I couldn't resist, and I went and I joined different .coms. I found that consumer research was one of the most interesting, and that consumer behavior was kind of probably the most fascinating thing I could be looking at. And so yeah, I naturally took up a kind of a research and analysis roles with those .com and tech startups.
Well, it's a fascinating time to be in research, isn't it? The interface between humans and technology, I think, has been, the last 20 years has been intriguing, to say the least. Yeah.
No, well, even 25 or even more. I think I don't know. For me, it was like 97 when we really started. We got on the internet. We were on it every day, pretty much.
Yeah, I remember my first computer around that time, I think. And you've obviously been doing research a long time. Do you have a favorite methodology or methodologies you like to use or you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really like them all. and but I like them. I especially like them when they get kind of mixed up and mashed together, and especially over time. So if it's so I would have to say asynchronous qual, usually like an online community or bulletin board, however you want to kind of look at it, but where you mix up, you have participants doing text responses, but then they also do video responses. They post photos that which can be them themselves, or they post found content off of the web, and then yeah, you enter in conversations with them in the sense that you're doing probes and things like that. And then and then if you really want to kind of get face to face with them, you can set up a 20-minute video conference, and so it really allows you to kind of get the best of all the different methodologies, but in one kind of unifying platform. And over time is nice because you really sunk into it and you get to know people pretty well.
Yeah, that sounds very sort of diary study like, in terms of a method. Definitely
Diaries.
very revealing. Yeah.
No, and not too long, because then it becomes overwhelming, but like two-week diary studies and longitudinal, or not, that's not really longitudinal, but mini longitudinal, let's say.
Yeah, cool. And the kind of sectors you've worked in, you've mentioned a few, and obviously consumers as a group of participants has been important, but what sort of sectors have you worked in?
Well, obviously my roots are in consumer e-commerce and in tech. And then I've also done quite a bit of financial services and quite a bit of FMCG, actually. And I do a lot of, I actually do a lot of research every year into drinks markets, where I'm researching and doing interviews with professionals in different drink manufacturers, and then it involves a lot of consumer research as well. And then I don't get them as much as I used to, but I do get some kind of FMCG types of studies once in a while. Most recent, I did one just recently on vapors. So it'd been a long time since I'd actually worked for a tobacco company.
God, yeah.
This happened to be a tobacco company with vaping products. That was very interesting. Yeah.
Cool. And the one of the things I've been asking people, because we're UX24/7 well, and we're very strongly driven toward helping our customers be more customer centric, and I'm really interested to understand our researchers' view on the brands they work with, how customer centric they are, and in particular how that is different between markets. So from your perspective, obviously in Spain or even the UK and US, can you sort of speak to how mature those markets are and the brands within them that you work with?
Yeah, I struggled with this question about customer centricity. That, to be honest, it was it's really a feedback loop. I mean, brands and companies are focusing on consumers, and that's been a trend that's increased certainly since the 90s, when it was kind of like you launch your technology, especially in technology, you launch your technology, and then consumers learn how to use it. And then you over a couple of years, you kind of get some customer feedback, and then you do some tweaks when you do an update after about 2 years. But things have definitely, that cycle is shortened, and their new product development is much more customer focused. And but at the same time, there's the tech companies, they have their systems, and then FMCG companies, they have their providers, they have their factories, and they can only change things at a certain rate. You can't change a whole production line because consumer research shows that they want it curved a little more. You can change it, but you can't change it really quickly, and it's very expensive to change. So it's hard to say. I want to say they're about 50% there, but then it's hard to go really much more beyond 50% because there's all the restrictions and systems and factories and just capacity and resources. So you can't give this consumer everything they want all the time at at the right price, unfortunately.
Well, that's despite the fact you said you struggle, that's a really interesting answer, actually, and a really fascinating perspective, actually, on how you talked about the market changing over time, because we still see, I think, too much companies relying on sort of launch something and test it live rather than sort of involve their customers in the process. And I think your 50-50 might even be a bit ambitious. but anyway, let's move on. So
it's certainly improved over the last couple of decades.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that is true, which is good. We're heading in the right direction. And what do you think is the biggest challenge brands and product directors face when undertaking a sort of research study?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to concentrate on UX kind of more specifically because it does have some specific kind of challenges, and it's definitely defining the objectives and the scope. So really, what you want to look at. Back in the 90s at the .coms, we were doing a lot of usability, like where do we need to put this button, and how does this menu structure work? Is it intuitive? And so things like that, we were zeroing in on very key aspects of interacting with an interface, right? And then obviously there's all sorts of filter tools and things, how things appear visually and things like that that you can focus on. But over the years, it's become much more of a UX, which is user experience, and the experience in the whole journey and how that works. And that involves a lot more. It involves the interface, but then it also the service, the content, the products that you have on a website or app or even a software. And then you can even take into consideration like things like pricing and other kind of unmet needs. And so it becomes much more of a holistic kind of look. But so many times you really need to define what you want to look at. Do you want to look at a certain aspect? And then if so, you have to design your project so that you zero in on that aspect and you filter out kind of the other stuff in the journey, because otherwise you won't get a clear read. But on the other hand, maybe you do want to kind of include more aspects of the journey and get more of a holistic look. It's always kind of difficult to get that balance right, and you really have to understand what your objectives are and what you want a clear read on, and then go from there.
So the challenge that I'm taking from that is really about being clear about the objectives of the research and then designing the research to meet those objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if you say we want to do the whole experience, that's great. You'll get good feedback on the whole experience, but you won't know if your menu is right. It has the right structure to it, for example.
Okay. Thank you. That's really, really interesting. And could you speak about Flagship projects you've delivered? I'd be really interested to hear about that. It sounds like you've got such a depth of experience over such a long period of time.
Yeah, sure. It was kind of tough. I had to kind of go through, but I think One thing does stand out as being fairly really interesting, really innovative, and it was a project that went on for a few years. So basically from 2007 to 2011, approximately, I had a strategic alliance with an Italian neuroscientist, and we and we had a key customer, which was McCann Erickson, Universal McCann, the ad agency and media agencies, and who happened to be the biggest one in Spain, at least. And so we did a series of neurobiofeedback analyses on different kinds of, mostly a lot of ads, obviously, television ads, but then also a lot of kind of digital stimuli, social media, things like that. And so we had one wave that was actually focused on digital experiences, and yeah, and so that fed directly into kind of the insights and inspiration, I guess, for the creatives. So they really were able to see, okay, what ads work, what content works, and also what kind of formula, you did. It involved obviously a lot of quants with neurobiological feedback, but then we also had a lot of qual in there. We did pre and post interviews and things. So yeah, it was just a lot of different ways of getting feedback, and a lot of different ways of framing that so it could be used in the creation of better advertising, especially, but also digital experiences as well. And they have some very large customers such as Repsol or Coca-Cola, and so you really saw kind of the impact actually on the television at night in the different ad campaigns that were being aired in that time frame in Spain.
That's really interesting, and it feels like at that time there was a lot going on in that area of neuroscience. I was with an agency myself, and we were using encephalography to look at brain waves as people changed pages on websites to see what the emotional impact was. And it sounds that project you're talking about is way bigger than what we were doing, but similar sort of space. And I'm kind of surprised it's not become more mainstream, more broadly over time, because that was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of agencies that are very specialized in it, and it's still out there. It's far from mainstream.
Yeah,
and it's also it's got its difficulties and challenges. The translating brainwaves into insights is very difficult. You get a string of electrical outputs on an encephalography, and so it's not straightforward in the analysis, and of all the methodologies I've worked with, there's always the output, which is hard to interpret, but that is the most difficult to interpret of all.
Good. Well, look, I'd like to move the conversation on a bit, because I'm eager to ask this next question, because a lot of researchers I ask about their own market only know their own market and they can't compare with others. But you obviously live and work in Spain, but you've worked in other markets as well. So I'm really interested in your answer about what our behaviors are unique to the market, unique maybe to Spain, that you see in those users or consumers that you don't see in other markets around the world.
Yeah. So yeah, I struggled with this one too, but one thing that's particular about the Spanish market is that compared to other countries, especially e-commerce is slow to take off. There's lower levels, lower growth, more resistance, and it has to do with a lot of different factors. But one of the key ones is that in Spain, Spain has mostly avoided urban sprawl, and so you have cities that are walkable, and you have quite literally shops on every corner, and you have everything, and you also have a society that loves kind of walking and socializing and mixing together. So yeah, whenever a company comes in with in Spain, they have to really think about their distribution strategy, and they shouldn't overestimate how quickly e-commerce will take off. So if in France and Britain, they achieve this level of sales in the first year, well, they should at least half that for Spain, and they should have to think about how they're going to get it distributed on those shops that are on just about every street. There's all sorts of different. So the e-commerce is a little less important, and you want to make sure you get your neighborhood proximity commerce down, especially if you're doing FMCG.
Well, that's really interesting, particularly about sort of the geographic and cultural impact on that, on the way e-commerce rolls out. That's fascinating.
There's also a little bit of more reticence to putting credit cards online and things like that, and not being trusting that it will be delivered. But I don't think that's the major factor. I think the most important factor is that you can buy things. There's so many shops are all around, and people like to go out and walk and shop, and they're very nice. They're very nice cities to walk around. I'm sure anybody who's visited Spain notices that. And so I think that's the most important factor, because we do see that things that are hard to find, which you can't get in any specific shop, especially collectibles and things like that, there is a very healthy, and they do well on it with the e-commerce models. So they are willing to buy online. It's just for other things that you can find fairly easily, they don't mind walking out and going to the shop.
Interesting. And my final couple of questions, Brian. What's currently inspiring you, or what inspires you? And I know you've got a talk coming up, so it might be all the planning for that. But what's going through your head at the moment?
Yeah, no, I have to say that, well, certainly that is youth culture is inspiring. That's what my talk is about. My little agency back in Spain in the early 2000s was actually focused on youth culture. So the first several years, it was almost an exclusive focus of doing qual and quant youth culture studies. And so that's, and so this talk and this little study that we did at the end of last year is kind of recovering some of that inspiration. But I also have to say that generative AI and its applications to market research are an interesting. So we're all hearing about all this chat GPT, and it's become a hot topic. And yeah, I've always been interested in kind of the intersection of qual and quant, and how you can actually build, quant allows you to build technologies that can automatically respond to different both quantitative and qualitative inputs. So it's something I've always been interested in, and it's good to see it coming to the fore. I don't tend to share the kind of the robots are going to take over fear mentality, So it certainly is fairly daunting when you contemplate its impact. But I think it's something to embrace and not. We're in the end, we're actually doing it. We're in control of what's going to happen with it. So we have to be responsible with that power that we have.
Well, let's hope so. And finally, what's your biggest learning since you became a researcher?
Yeah, I struggle with this one too, but I'm going to go back to the neurobiological feedback study that we did. And one thing that was really interesting, I mean, we all know that everybody's their own individual, right? But we also tend to fall into specific behavioral patterns, right? That we can understand and analyze. And no, we can't say that, this one person is going to react in this way because, but we can say on an aggregate, a population will tend to show these different patterns and things. And so one of the things we learned there is that very generally, you can kind of divide the population into people who are naturally nervous and high energy, right? And so if they react positively to a stimuli, they will actually calm down and relax. And then there's another part of the population which tends to be kind of naturally relaxed and low key. And when they react positively to a stimulus, they will naturally get excited. And that's their positive response. And so you have kind of these opposite responses. And so it's hard to really analyze things in an aggregate. I think you have to you do have to do segmentations, and from there you can start to understand how people react differently to the same stimuli. But the fact that they react differently could be positive for one and could be negative for another. But you don't want to put out a stimuli and say, okay, if they react like this, then it's good. That's what we want. Let's rate that as positive. You have to understand where different people are coming from, and then know how to evaluate their reactions based on an understanding of their natural segmentation patterns.
That's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
It says everything really about the need for in-depth research, rather than just sort of surface level. Oh, yeah, let's just make a decision on that. You can see why products fail and others succeed.
Yeah, you don't want to just say, well, if 60% have the reaction that we have decided is favorable, then let's launch it. And that's not, you want to kind of dig deep and understand the underlying motivations and behavior patterns that people show.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for sparing the time to speak to me. It's been really, really interesting. I'm sure whoever sees you at the conference a couple of weeks' time, it's in Amsterdam, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 3 weeks.
3 weeks' time. Well, I'm sure they'll be fascinated to hear what you've got to say, as I have been today. So thank you so much for joining me, and best of luck with your talk.
Okay. Well, thank you, Paul, and enjoy this series of interviews. I think it's a good initiative.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Brian and his experience dating all the way back to the late 90s, rather like myself. I was thinking that's a very interesting perspective because digital's still relatively new. And of course, Brian has such a wide range of experience, not just in digital research, but with neuroscience and advertising and products and all sorts of things. So a really interesting interview. My name's Paul Blunden. I'm founder of UX24. If you want to find out more about what we do, visit our website. That's www.ux247.com, or find me on LinkedIn and message me there. And of course, better still, subscribe to this channel. There'll be another interview coming along shortly. Thanks very much for watching.